Rachel Carson is a famous American author born in 1907. She got a biology degree and went on to get her master's in zoology from Johns Hopkins. Rachel Carson wrote 3 books about the ocean, which were highly acclaimed by the general public. She then went on to write her most famous book, Silent Spring, about the effects of pesticides and DDT on the environment and on animal and human health. Rachel Carson was a marine biologist by training, but she was one during a time in which chemistry was the most well-recognized and respected science, and the majority of scientists were male. Rachel Carson did not receive a lot of respect from the scientific community because she was female and a biologist. However, her trilogy of books about the ocean gained lots of acclaim from the general public, and she was well loved by many. One element of the situation surrounding Rachel Carson's writing of Silent Spring was that she was battling breast cancer at the time she wrote it. This shows that Rachel Carson believed this book was extremely urgent and she needed to finish writing it before she died. Silent Spring, a 363-page book published in 1962, was read by many people, particularly her audience of the general public. This book started a movement that eventually led to the creation of the EPA, or Environmental Protection Agency. So the big question is, how did Rachel Carson do this? How did she write a book that was so convincing that it led to the creation of a whole new government agency? Rachel Carson's handle of rhetorical strategies and her use of them altogether led her to be able to make such a compelling argument that inspired so many people. Silent Spring mainly uses the strategies of ethos, kairos, and logos, which will be explained later. She also targeted a very specific audience that would be most instrumental in bringing the EPA and other changes to the United States. One of the most prominent rhetorical strategies Rachel Carson uses in Silent Spring is ethos. Ethos is all about creating credibility for the author. There are 2 types of ethos, invented and situated ethos. Invented ethos is ethos that the author creates through their argument in the paper. And situated ethos is credibility that already exists from who the author is. Rachel Carson was well qualified to write this book because she had a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in zoology. She had also worked for the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution as well as the U.S. Bureau of Fisheries. A biologist by training, she had knowledge in chemistry as well. However, the male-dominated and chemistry-dominated scientific field somewhat discredited her qualifications. Rachel Carson also created her own credibility in the book, which is invented ethos, by quoting from the FDA and pulling scientific knowledge that was from very credible sources. Another specific form of ethos that Rachel Carson used is called eunoia. Eunoia is creating goodwill between the author and the audience. When Rachel Carson wrote this book, the effects of DDT and other chemicals were well known by the scientific community. However, chemical companies and the government did not tell people about the concerns with these chemicals and the hazardous effects they could have on people's health. While the government was quiet about these issues, Rachel Carson was not. Silent Springs publicized this knowledge and made it accessible to her main reader base, which was wealthy, educated Americans. These people did not know about the effects of DDT and other chemicals, and were extremely alarmed and angry when they found out. Rachel Carson also created goodwill towards her audience by using chemistry and scientific terms, but in a way that the general audience could understand. In Silent Spring, Rachel Carson uses simple chemical diagrams, such as the ones shown on the top of this page. While these are not the exact chemical structures of the pesticides she refers to, she explains how these chemical structures impact the function of the chemical. This is a lot more effective for a general audience than using complicated chemical diagrams such as the one on the bottom, which is the formula for DDT. While DDT is a chemical that is referred to in this book, using this complicated diagram will not make it more accessible to her reader base. However, using the top ones will. The next rhetorical device Rachel Carson uses is called kairos. This is the timeliness of the writing and reflects the relevance of the subject matter in the current political and cultural climate. Rachel Carson reflects the time and place at which she's writing in Silent Spring by comparing the effects of pesticides to the effects of nuclear fallout. This book was written post-World War II, when the people who were alive at the time remembered the effects of the bombs. By comparing these two things, Rachel Carson imprints the significance of the effects of pesticides on the general population. The third rhetorical device Rachel Carson heavily uses in Silent Spring is called logos, or logic. This is where the writer refers to facts and also forces the reader to think critically. That is what Rachel Carson does primarily in the first 3 chapters of Silent Spring. Rachel Carson leads the reader down a logical path. She begins by explaining the pesticide and then explaining the effects that it has on people, which are sickness or death, and they are also very harmful to the environment. Then, the logical assumption would be that the government bans these chemicals, and that is what the reader is supposed to assume. However, Rachel Carson goes on to explain that this is not what actually happens. Instead, these harmful pesticides are used very widely. Rachel Carson, by using this logical approach, gets readers to feel angry about the government's irresponsible use of pesticides. The rhetorical strategies used in Rachel Carson's Silent Spring were clearly effective because they resulted in real tangible effects, such as the creation of the EPA and the establishment of Earth Day.